The unbelievable disappearance of a millionaire's wife in Pittsburgh, was she cursed? I never should have opened that door. It was a rainy Tuesday when the news broke. The air thick with tension. Jen, the wife of Pittsburgh's richest tycoon, vanished. Gone without a trace. Just like that, she was a ghost. Whispers filled the streets. Cursed, they said. She had it coming, others murmured. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Something was off. My usual morning routine shattered. I brewed my coffee, but the scent was lost in the mix of impending dread. My hands trembled slightly, a residual effect of the storm outside. I flipped through social media, news alerts flooding my phone. Black and white images of a glamorous woman in designer gowns flashed at me. A bright smile. Laughing at a gala. But beneath those images lurked shadows, dark corners of Yen's life. Rumors of affairs, debts, even enemies lurking in the shadows. It made my heart race. The clock ticked loudly in the silence of my small kitchen. Tick. 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 Then, a strange noise broke through. Soft, like whispers, or was it someone calling? I leaned closer to my window, peering out into the dark morning, unsure of what I wanted to find. The rain drummed against the pane, making me jump. A flash of lightning illuminated the alley beside my building. For just a second, I thought I saw a figure. Tall, draped in black. My stomach knotted. I blinked hard, but it was gone. Was that just my imagination? I could almost taste the fear, a metallic tang in my mouth. As I backed away, I heard it again. A shuffling sound. My breath caught. It felt close, like someone was right outside, watching. My heart pounded, and a fine mist of sweat formed on my brow. The shadows in my apartment deepened, closing in, suffocating me. Suddenly, a loud crash came from my living room. My pulse raced. I grabbed my phone, but my hands shook too much to type. What could it be? The noise echoed through the empty space. I took a breath, steeling myself, and stepped toward the door. Just then, the lights flickered. A heartbeat skipped. I froze. All was quiet for a moment, then darkness. I felt it wrap around me, thick and cold. In the void, it was just me and the pounding of my heart that I cursed under my breath. I should have stayed in bed. I should have ignored the news. Suddenly, I knew I wasn't alone. I felt eyes on me, chilling my soul. There was a presence, a weight in the air, thick as fog. What was happening? Then a knock. Quiet, but deliberate. My skin prickled. I was too afraid to move. What if it was Jen? What if she had returned? But why would she? Before I could finish that thought, the door creaked open. I gasped, my heart dropping into my stomach. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The door swung inward slowly, as if moved by an unseen hand, revealing the dimly lit hallway beyond. My mind raced. What did I want to see? A desperate hope rose in my chest, mingled with a paralyzing fear. I braced myself, fists clenched, expecting the worst. Instead, nothing greeted me save the heavy silence of my own breathing. That I stepped cautiously into the darkened living room. Shadows slithered across the walls, twisted forms that dared me to enter. The furniture loomed like specters, and the remnants of the storm whispered through the half-open window. Jen. I called, my voice barely breaking the eerie stillness. No response. The curtains fluttered with the cold, damp breeze, and my instincts screamed for me to turn back. Yet, curiosity lured me deeper. I leaned down to pick up a shattered picture frame lying face down on the floor. The glass glinted ominously in the flickering light when I suddenly heard it again, the soft, insistent shuffling. It was close. Too close that a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye made me spin around, the frame clattering against the hardwood as my nerves trembled. There, at the far end of the hall, the outline of a figure stood, swathed in darkness. It was too tall, too still. My throat tightened. I knew I should run. I knew that once I let myself look away, whatever was lurking would vanish as suddenly as it had appeared. Like, "Jen, who's there?" I urged, heart racing as the figure's outline shifted ever so slightly. Silence draped itself over the space, heavy and smothering. I couldn't tell if it was a trick of the light or something far more sinister staring back at me. Then, a low laugh, chilling and hollow, broke the silence. It echoed through the corridor, reverberating like the twisted toll of a bell. The figure began to glide forward, each step deliberate and slow, as if savoring the fear radiating from my frozen body. I stumbled back, my back pressed against the cold wall as it approached. "Help me," a voice croaked, distorted and wet, as if drawn up from the depths of a grave. The message pierced me, but it felt like a siren's call. I wanted to turn and flee, yet something rooted me to the spot. The figure's face was obscured, but its hand reached out, fingers elongated and claw-like, as if beckoning me closer. That I could hear the rain intensify outside, a relentless pounding that matched my heartbeat. The voice echoed again, increasing in urgency. "Help me, Jen needs you." My mind spun. At once, I was swept back to the news, the whispers of curses and betrayal, of debts owed and shadows that lingered in the alley behind my building. I felt a well of dread rise within me, overpowering my senses. What was happening? Had Jen truly returned, or was this an illusion, a deception orchestrated by something far more nefarious? Desperate clarity settled over me as the figure drew closer. I realized that with every step it took, the shadows around it oozed like spilled ink. Darkness pooled at its feet, twisting and writhing as if alive and hungry. My instinct screamed at me to escape, to run far away from this manifestation of terror, but that twisted voice entwined itself around my thoughts and wouldn't let go. "Help me," it whispered again, and I could almost feel the icy breath against my skin. Before it's too late, before I could process my next move, the lights flickered once more, plunging me momentarily into utter blackness. And in those lingering seconds of darkness, I felt its cold fingers wrapping around my wrist like the grip of a vice. I gasped, wrenching myself away, but the laugh echoed again, closer now, filled with malevolence. "Going somewhere?" It sneered. Terror exploded within me, sheer panic flooding my veins. I turned, ready to bolt for the door, but the hallway was not as it had been moments before. The distance stretched endlessly like a yawning chasm, the exit receding far beyond reach. I was trapped. As the figure stepped forward into the dim light, I could see it was no longer just a silhouette. Jen, or what had once been her, stood before me, her features twisted, mouth fixed in a sinister smile. Her eyes, void of any warmth, were wide and empty, evoking a feeling of shared dread. "Help me," she repeated, but it was then I realized it wasn't just Jen's voice. It was a chorus of voices, layering over each other, a haunting melody of cries muffled by the grasp of despair. And then, in the throes of rising horror, I noticed the walls. They were moving. What I thought were just shadows were laced with faces screaming, pleading, trapped in an eternity of torment. As I stepped back, overwhelmed, my foot hit something soft, the photo frame shattered beneath me, sending shards across the floor. "Help us!" they wailed in unison. And with a deafening crash, the darkness closed in, swallowing me whole as Jen lunged forward, her smile widening, ready to take me into the abyss. I screamed. But in my heart, a horrifying truth solidified: the curse was never hers alone. The darkness tightened around me as I stumbled backward, the cacophony of voices growing louder, drowning out the sound of my own frantic breaths. I felt as though I were being pulled through a vortex of despair, a whirlpool of fear and sorrow that threatened to consume my very essence. "Help us! Help us!" manifested across the walls in a cruel chorus, the faces within the shadows pressing against the surface, their mouths twisted into horror-filled grimaces. I could see now that they were clawing at the edges of their prison, desperate for release, their eyes wide with longing and a pain that felt like my own. "Get away from me!" I cried, the words tearing from my lips in sheer desperation. The figure of Jen, her face a gruesome mask of joy tinged with malice, advanced, her smile more jagged, predatory. It was as though she derived pleasure from my terror, feeding off the desperation that radiated from me like heat. With a final effort, I turned to flee, abandoning rational thought in favor of pure survival. I lunged toward the end of the hall, seeking an escape, but the corridor twisted and contorted before my eyes. What had been a straightforward path now resembled a grotesque maze, walled in by the anguished faces that writhed and squirmed in their shadowy confines. I sprinted toward the flickering light at the far end, praying for safety, but the ground beneath me suddenly lurched, and I felt my foot give way as I stumbled onto the splintered wooden floor. Fear surged through me again as I glanced back. Jen was closer now, the shadows coiling around her like hungry serpents. Suddenly, the whispers ceased, a vacuum of sound filling the space, and I realized I was teetering on the edge of something very deep. Beneath me, the floorboards groaned like a wounded animal, splintering in places as what lay underneath began to push upward. I saw them, hands clawing out from the darkness below, reaching for me while wails of despair rose to a pitiful crescendo. The floor, my only means to escape, was collapsing into the void, each crack reaching toward the mounting panic flooding my system. I felt the icy fingers of lost souls brush against my skin as I fell back, the air heavy with dread. Help us echoed endlessly, their tragic pleas forming a grotesque symphony that laced every inch of the house, every crack in the wall, every corner of my mind. With a final shriek, I scrambled to my feet and dashed toward the light, which pulsed erratically just ahead. Yen's visage was a dark mockery of the woman I loved. It sank deeper into unearthly features and grotesque forms. "You can't escape," she taunted, her voice reverberating as she glided effortlessly, mere inches away, the shadows draped like a funeral shroud around her. I plunged into the light, breath hitching as it enveloped me, and in a frantic sweep, I felt the temperature drop sharply. I emerged into a room filled with faded memories, old photographs lining the walls, remnants of a life that felt foreign to me now. This place had become a graveyard of echoes, whispering secrets I didn't wish to know. Suddenly, a sound filled the room, a soft, sorrowful sobbing emanating from the far corner. I crept toward the sound, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. A figure crouched in the gloom, hunched over in defeat. It was a woman, her body trembling as she wept, the air thick with despair. Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. She looked up, and my heart dropped. Her face was an echo of Yen's, twisted with anguish as her lips quivered. "You shouldn't have come here. You've awakened the curse." A chilling realization wrapped around me. With each word she spoke, I saw a flash of memory of a lifetime of laughter, of whispers of love, of warmth laced with shadows. The walls were closing in, whispering my own name in desperation. "You have to leave," she murmured. "Or they will take you, too." But before I could respond, the shadows converged, darkness leaking from every crevice. The hands from below surged forth, grasping, clawing, desperately seeking me. In the throes of panic, I spun on my heel, ready to fight a way out. But as I turned back, the woman was gone, and Jen was waiting for me, her eyes alight with triumph. "Did you really think you could escape?" she hissed, and I knew I was ensnared in a web of torment, the curse tightening its grip around me. With a heart-stopping realization, I felt the cold grasp of fingers wrap around my neck, pulling me back into the waiting shadows, and I screamed. The darkness engulfed me, and I felt the ground pull away beneath my feet, sending me plummeting into an abyss with no end, consumed by the cries of the damned until silence swallowed me whole. And then, the whispers began anew. I awakened with a jolt, a cold sweat clinging to my skin, my heart drumming violently in my chest. The air was stale and thick, weighing heavily on me like a shroud. I blinked against the dim light filtering through what looked like a flickering bulb overhead, and then I remembered where I was, caught in the endless reach of that cursed house. As I pushed myself off the floor, a grimace formed on my face. I could feel the energy of the room, a dark weight, pulsating with hidden pain. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in rhythm with my racing heart. I stumbled forward, each crack of the floor beneath me sounding like the snapping of bones. I was in a small, windowless room, cluttered with moldy furniture and decaying remnants of lives long gone. An old mirror hung askew on the wall, and as I stepped closer, the reflection sent shockwaves of dread through me. I could see not just my own terrified expression, but shadows gathering behind me, morphing into indistinct forms, whispering silent secrets I couldn't comprehend them why breath caught in my throat. I needed to escape this nightmare, but the only exit was a cracked door, swathed in an ominous darkness. With every step I took towards it, phantom hands brushed lightly against my arms, their coldness traveling through my veins. The fear clawed at my sanity, and I could no longer tell if I was awake or trapped in my own twisted dream. Pushing the door open, I was met with a long, silent hallway lit solely by the class of graying wallpaper, peeling away as if the walls themselves were shedding their anguish. Shadows flitted from corner to corner like dark harbingers of doom, twisting the very essence of my surroundings. Suddenly, the whispers erupted again, louder this time, a frantic chorus of voices swirling around me, melding with the echoes of my pounding heart. "Join us, join us!" I pressed on, fighting the urge to turn back, but with each stride, a sense of dread coiled deeper in my chest. I made my way down the corridor, then stopped dead in my tracks when a faint glimmer caught my eye. A door at the end of the hall was left slightly ajar, a flicker of light escaping from the thin crack. With a shaky hand, I gripped the doorknob, turning it slowly, letting the door creak open just enough for me to peer inside. The room beyond was illuminated, revealing what seemed to be an ethereal garden, filled with flowers that glowed in hues of blue and purple, floating lights hovering just above the petals. It was beautiful, almost otherworldly, but an underlying sense of decay wove through the picturesque scene, like a sweet fragrance masking rotting flesh. As I stepped into the enchanted chamber, the door slammed shut behind me with a chilling finality. I turned back, my hand brushing against the cold wood, desperate to escape back into the familiar darkness of the hallway, but it was no use. The air thickened unnaturally, and the whispering voices were now close enough to make out individual words. "Choose, choose." A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman garbed in tattered lace. Her face was concealed beneath a veil, but her soulless eyes pierced through the fabric, locking onto mine with an intensity that froze my blood. "You must choose," she murmured, her voice echoing off the once vibrant walls. "One must remain." I gasped, confusion swirling within me. "What do you mean?" The woman raised her hand, revealing a small, intricate box that pulsed with a faint light. "Inside lies the key to your freedom. But one life must be given to reclaim your own. Do you dare to decide?" Panic welled within me as I realized that the whispers grew louder, inflating with tension as hidden spirits surged closer, feeding off my fear and indecision. Faces formed in the shadows, their mouths moving in silent screams, pleading for liberation. I felt their sorrow wrapping around my throat, choking me gently as dread settled into my bones. "Take it," the woman commanded, tilting her head as her shadows crept closer. "You are bound to this place now. You must choose or endure." I looked around, desperation clawing at my insides. The beauty of the room became grotesque, as the flowers now seemed more like the grave markers of lost souls. I could already feel their presence curdling in the pit of my stomach. What kind of choice was this? I looked back at the box, glimmering ominously in her hand, as it promised salvation with our impending doom looming ever closer. A blood-curdling shriek erupted from the garden, shaking the very foundations of the room and casting the flowers into a whirlwind of petals. I stumbled back, heart racing as the darkness rushed in, the shadows howling, "Choose! Choose!" And just as the walls began to close in, an icy chill swept through the air. The veiled woman raised the box higher, beckoning me forward, a maniacal grin curling beneath the fabric as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. I dove toward the woman, desperation fueling my actions, but as I reached for the box, her face turned to hideous terror, and the room shattered around me, leaving only the whisper guttural and wild echoing in the abyss that awaited as I fell once more into the consuming darkness. The last thing I heard was the laughter of lost souls, mingling with ominous words that dripped like venom into my consciousness. One must remain, and in that final moment, holding on to the breath of hope, I felt an icy hand slip around my ankle, pulling me deeper into the void from which I may never return. I was submerged in a darkness so thick it seemed alive, pulsating with a dreadful urgency that enveloped me like a shroud. Cold air brushed against my skin, its icy fingers trailing down my spine, and I realized that the laughter had faded, replaced by the deafening silence of my own heartbeat. My eyes fluttered open, struggling to adjust to the inky blackness surrounding me. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind. Where was I? My throat tightened as I called out, but only a raspy whisper escaped my lips. The words felt foreign, swallowed by the suffocating gloom. I pushed myself up off the ground, limbs heavy with an unseen weight, and instantly recoiled as my fingers brushed against something wet. The floor beneath me was slick, a viscous substance that sent a shocking jolt of horror through my already fraying nerves. Heart racing, I lifted my hands, illuminated only by the feeble flicker of that distant light. Blood. My hands were smeared with a dark, sticky red, and the realization sent me spiraling into a tempest of fear. Hello? I choked out, but the darkness swallowed my sound, consuming it before it ever reached the shadows lurking just beyond my vision. Thinking it best to move, I slowly rose to my feet, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of decay and something far worse, something that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I stumbled forward, each cautious step a prayer for safety. Yet, the darkness seethed like a living entity, shifting and curling around me as I traveled deeper into the gut of this nightmare. Soon, I caught a glimpse of a doorway, a silhouette against the oppressive blackness. It beckoned to me with its slender frame and faintly glowing handle. Desperation mixed with disbelief propelled me toward it. As I reached out, fingers trembling, an agonizing cry splintered the silence behind me that I spun around, eyes wide in horror as an apparition materialized before me, a child, no older than 5, her porcelain skin glowing eerily in the dimness, eyes hollow with a depth of sorrow I had never known. She stared at me with a vacant gaze, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Help me please, no. Stay away." I yelled instinctively, panic spiraling around me as I stepped backward, only to feel something solid behind me, a wall, closing me in. Trapped. The little girl reached out with a skeletal hand, her voice sinking into an echo, reverberating in my skull. One must remain. She took a step forward, drawing nearer, and suddenly the sweet smell of lilacs filled the air, dizzying and strange amidst the acrid scent of blood and rot. Before I could react, shadows surged at me, dark claws reaching out like spiders longing to drag me into an abyss of despair. Screams erupted all around, voices layered upon each author, a cacophony of anguish and confusion. Choose. The ghastly chorus rose in pitch, weaving through the air like an inescapable web, binding me to the spot. Choose. Gritting my teeth, I spun toward the child, desperation clawing at my insides. What do you want? What am I supposed to do? My voice trembled, the intensity of my fear crashing over me like waves. Save me. Choose or I am lost. She cried out, her voice warping into a wail that harmonized with the crescendo of ghostly sounds enveloping me. My eyes darted around, desperately searching for any escape. My mind raced as the shadows writhed hungrily, their whispers melding with the child's pleas, deceiving and tormenting me. And in an instant, I saw a flicker of light through the cracks of the doorframe behind me. Hope flared within me like a match struck in the dimness. With no time to think, I lunged towards the door, ignoring the child's anguished scream as I swung it open. The light flooded my senses, illuminating a strange room. It was a Gothic ballroom, surreal and breathtaking, filled with countless ornate chandeliers sparkling like stars against a velvet sky, but the sight turned to terror as the room morphed into a grotesque tableau. Figures danced, their bodies twisted and distorted, shadowed. Faces caught in frozen screams. I stumbled backward, the door slamming shut behind me, locking me inside this unholy masquerade. and then the music began, sorrowful notes entwining through the air, pulling at the strings of my heart as I realized the dancing figures were the tortured souls from the house, ensnared in a waltz of despair, forever locked in their maddening cycle. It was then that I noticed, among the twisted movements, the faces I recognized from newspapers and social media. The missing, the lost, forever trapped in their eternal dance, their eyes pleading for release. One face stood out above the rest, staring directly at me with helplessness ignited in those once vibrant eyes. The woman, the one with the box. The one who promised a choice. As the shadows encircled me once more, the music crescendoed into a haunting finale, and the room began to darken, sending waves of terror crashing over me. My heart pounded wild in my chest, drowning out all thought. "Join us!" They shrieked in unison, fingers outstretching, grasping for my presence. One must remain in that moment. I felt the chilling grip of hopelessness squeezing tight around my throat, and the gravity of my choice weighed heavy, dragging me into its depths. I was teetering on the precipice of oblivion, and as the tendrils of darkness grasped my ankles, I realized that my choice was slipping away faster than I could grasp. The last thing I heard was the echoing laughter of the lost souls, and the chilling confirmation, "Choose, or you will become one of us," and then, before I could scream, everything went black once more. The darkness enveloped me again, thick and suffocating, as if the very air were woven with despair. In the absence of light, I could feel the presence of those who danced just beyond my sight, swirling to the muffled rhythm of their tormented song. Their laughter echoed in my mind, a haunting melody that twisted my stomach in knots of terror and dread that I huddled on the cold floor, my breath coming in short, frantic gasps. My heart thundered against my ribcage, a frantic drum echoing in a symphony of despair. The shadows loomed close, whispering secrets only the damned could hear. "Choose, join us," the voices cascaded around me, a chorus of the unwilling, reminding me of my impending doom. I pressed my palms tightly against my ears, trying to block out the cacophony, but the wails seeped through, burrowing deep into my psyche. Suddenly, an otherworldly chill coursed through the Spasea presence, heavier and more malignant than before. The very atmosphere crackled with an unseen energy, and the light from the chandelier dimmed, replaced by a sickly green glow emanating from a forgotten corner of the room. I turned my head, compelled by a force I didn't understand. There, amidst the swirling shadows, stood a silhouette. A towering figure draped in tattered robes, its face obscured, but the eyes they burned with an intensity that rooted me to the floor. They were voids of darkness, pulling me in, dragging me toward the heart of despair where I could feel the whisper's heat, desperate for resolution. As I struggled to speak, the figure beckoned, one skeletal finger curling toward me. The room seemed to pulse in sync with its movement. "Your choice will seal their fates," it rasped, its voice like the screech of nails against stone, each syllable embedding itself within me, igniting the seeds of dread that had already taken root. With a flick of its wrist, the shadows shifted, swirling around to craft images of the souls trapped in this dreadful limbo. Their faces morphed before my eyes, hands outstretched as they pleaded for release. Among them were familiar visages, friends, family, and loved ones that I had wished to forget. "Help us," the figures cried, their voices a broken chorus of anguish. "Choose the one who will replace you. Choose, or all shall suffer." It was then that I saw Hermie's sister, Jennifer, caught in the throes of despair, her eyes wide with terror. She clawed at the air, searching for a way out, but the shadows held her tight, entwining her like a serpent. "Please, don't do this," she screamed, the sound slicing through me like a blade. The figure turned back to me, its void-like eyes reflecting the chaos of emotion within. "One must remain. Will it be you? Will it be the lost?" It paused, allowing the gravity of the choice to hang in the charged air. Adrenaline surged through my veins, igniting a will to fight, and yet despair dripped like poison into my heart as I realized the truth. It was more than mere choice, it was a curse, an eternal burden of guilt weaving tight like a noose. "That I want, choose," I shouted defiantly, clenching my fists, but the figure closed the distance, a whisper of breath chilling my skin. "You cannot escape fate, everyone here pays a price." Darkness spiraled tighter, moving with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat, pushing me toward the edge of my resolve. I could feel the warmth of my sister's presence. It hazed over me like a constant reminder of what was at stake. The tortured souls wailed together, their sorrow intertwining with my thoughts, as if the room were a living entity feeding on my fear. Suddenly, a rift tore open in the air with a cacophonous shriek. The swirling darkness broke, revealing a glimpse of blinding light beyond a promise of escape. Do you want to leave? The figure hissed, its voice a slithering whisper. Make your choice. It was meant to be an opportunity, but doubt rooted me to the spot. I could see Jennifer's face illuminated in the light too, fear etched deeply upon her features. Then a terror deeper than I had ever known slapped me like an icy wave when I noticed something lurking behind her. Another figure, twisted and grotesque, grinning with malevolence as it reached out with long, spindly fingers. That's not her, I cried, terror surging as realization hit me like a strike of lightning. That's not her. The room began to unravel, shadows spilling forth from every corner, creeping toward me, hungry for my decision. Their cries intensified, a frantic chorus that smothered my senses, and just when I thought I would drown in the voices, the lights flickered wildly above. In confusion and desperation, I blinked and found myself back on the cold floor. The ballroom was alive with grotesque movements, but this time something was different. I could hear whispers, a name that slipped through the shadows, contorting around me like smoke. Jennifer, Jennifer. The haunting cry ignited a spark of fury within me, igniting an instinctual need to fight against the forces binding us. I surged towards the malevolent light, fueled by love and desperation, but as I raised my hand, a scream erupted from behind me. Her name echoed, piercing through the fabric of reality. Help me. Help me. And then, the light dimmed, swallowing her words in a cruel void, leaving only a silence so pronounced it rang in my ears. I spun around, panic surging like a storm, and when I faced the shadowy figure again, it grinned, revealing rows of jagged teeth, a predatory glint in its hollow eyes, and then came the shattering realization dripping like poison, as it leaned closer, its breath cold against my skin. One must choose, and my dear, time is almost up. Before I could protest, the ballroom twisted violently, plunging into a chaos I couldn't comprehend, the shadows swallowing everything, including my last shred of hope. And just as I felt my strength faltering, the darkness shimmered, creating an opening, a door leading away from the dance of despair. But at what cost? With a final push, I stepped forward into the unknown. Without warning, I was pulled back, the soulless wails returning in full force, drowning any thought of escape as anguished faces emerged from the shadows, and in the split second before everything turned black again, their words froze my blood. The choice will always return to haunt you. And just before I lost consciousness, the last thing I saw was her face, Jennifer's face, twisting in spiteful mockery, fading into the depths of the darkness. The grotesque laugh rippled through the air, a precursor of horrors that lay ahead, and I realized perhaps I was already lost. I woke in a place that felt both familiar and foreign, the scent of damp earth surrounding me like a shroud. My body ached, and as I tried to move, my hands brushed against something cold and smooth. Panic surged when I realized I wasn't lying on a floor but rather on the ground of a graveyard, the headstones looming like spectral sentinels. Confusion wrapped itself around my mind. How had I ended up here? My heart raced as I remembered the darkness, the choice I had made, or rather, had tried to escape. Each heartbeat echoed in my ears, the silence of the graveyard drenched in an oppressive stillness that felt almost sacred, as if the ground itself was holding its breath. That I pushed myself up, the moonlight slicing through the clouds overhead, illuminating faded inscriptions on nearby headstones. The names stared back at me, taunting my tortured soul. Angela Miller, 1979 to 2022. Beloved daughter. Thomas Hargrove, 1953 to 2018. Devoted husband. Each name felt like a weight pressing down upon my chest, gnashing memories of those whose voices had echoed in the shadows. I desperately searched the area, dread snaking up my spine like a creeping vine. As I stood, a chill swept through the air, and my breath fogged in front of me. I turned around slowly, fully realizing I was no longer alone. Shadows coiled like smoke, pooling at the foot of the headstones and curving about me, wrapping around my ankles, talons seeking purchase. The air thickened with a growing malevolence, and I felt the eyes of the dead watching my every move. Helpless words drifted from the shadows, half-formed, yet eerily clear. I squinted into the darkness, my heart hammering in my chest. There, emerging from the ebony tides, were faces, anguished expressions twisted in silent screams, their mouths moving in an unending, morbid plea. The familiar silhouettes of my loved ones flickered in and out, candle flames struggling against the wind. Jennifer. My voice cracked as I called out. I knew she was here, somewhere. The idea that I could see her face, just one more time, pushed me forward despite the dread coiling around my heart. I stumbled through the haze of shadows, the voices rising, their despair merging into a cacophony of sorrow, a rose-wreathed figure at the center, beckoning me closer. Your sister watches. The shadows hissed in unison, the sound wrapping around me like a noose. You must make your choice again. Where is she? I shouted, desperate and afraid. The malevolent laughter swelled, an orchestra of grief concealed within shadows that twisted and turned like serpents. The specter materialized before me, an incarnation of fear, its face an unreadable mask, but its eyes those voids of darkness filled with an insatiable hunger. Every choice has its price, it whispered, pulling at the threads of my sanity. Do you even recognize the cost? Memories flooded my mind, each one heavy with the echoes of joy and despair. There was a time when laughter filled our home, when our family was unbroken and light spilled through every crack. But faced with the specter, I felt the weight of regret and sorrow vesting themselves in chains, each memory morphing into barbs that gripped my soul, and just when I thought I could tear myself away from the brink of madness, a chorus of cries broke through the haze. They changed, voices changing from tortured screams to sweet whispers of solace, begging for release, and buried within Jennifer's voice soaring above the discord. Choose me. I'm here. I'm begging you. The plea cut through me, sharp and agonizing, igniting a desperate fire inside. I staggered back, the figures around me shifting in color, the shadowy remnants flickering like the last embers of a fire. A ghastly view stretched before me as the darkness contorted. It began to reveal fragments of my sister's life, moments shattered and scattered, her laughter, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about her hopes and dreams. Picture in picture, each moment twisted into a torturous loop, and I felt my heart tighten. Jennifer, please. I reached out, but my fingers grazed only shadows, nothing solid. They'll consume you if you choose her, the lurking figure growled, moving closer, obscuring my vision of those cherished memories. Once chosen, she will become one with the lost. Shall never return, and you will join the countless souls here, forever mourning. That I shook my head, terror clawing at my throat. No. I won't give in. I can save her. The shadows hissed, a serpent's whisper behind me, undulating with dark promises. As I turned again to call her name, the ground beneath me heaved, and I felt my knees buckle with dread. Suddenly, the headstones began to crack, fissures opening across the earth, splintering apart like dry wood in a fire. Your time is up, the figure rasped, the laughter partying through the chaos almost joyous. The world spun, and suddenly two paths manifested in the debris. One road, drenched in shadow, led back to despair. The other, a winding trail flanked by bright but flickering lights, hovered with an inviting warmth. The what could be. Then, from the crackling darkness, I heard Jennifer's voice one last time, tremulous and despairing. Please. Don't leave me. With the ground giving way beneath me, the shadows swirled, pulling my feet as I felt an inexorable tug, a dirty hand from the abyss reaching for my heart. The enormity of the choice pulled me, threatening to drown me when I thought I could weigh the burden. I gasped for air, struggling against the encroaching void, and in solemn acceptance, I closed my eyes. The shadows cackled with glee, the world dissolving into chaos, darkness engulfing me as I lurched forward with outstretched hands and a desperate shout. Jennifer. The shadows consumed me, and everything went black, but the feeling of warmth lingered, a flicker behind the void, and I could almost hear her voice, so close yet so far away. Find me. Just as it began to fade, darkness gave way to a blinding light, and in that moment, I plunged deeper into the unknown, knowing that what awaited me would be far worse than anything I had ever endured. It was a new beginning and the end all at once. A terrifying truth sparked in that moment of realization. Perhaps I was meant to dwell with the lost after all. I awoke, not in a graveyard, but in a room that was achingly familiar yet grotesquely altered. Cracked walls were adorned with faded photographs of smiling faces, memories suspended in time. The air was thick, laden with the scent of decay and something else, a metallic tang that made my stomach churn. I sat up, heart racing, and a wave of nausea washed over me as I struggled to recall how I had arrived in this wretched space. My surroundings emerged from the shadows, revealing a dilapidated mansion, its elegance long eroded by time and neglect. A chandelier swayed above, its crystals clinking softly, a mournful echo that seemed to mock my arrival. The carpet underfoot felt like dried blood, squishing slightly with my every hesitant step. My fingers brushed against the wallpaper, peeling like dried skin, and I recoiled, a shiver racing down my spine. "Jennifer," I whispered, but the name fell flat in the oppressive silence. The mansion felt alive, breathing with the viscous darkness that seeped from the walls. I could almost hear the whispers of the lost, echoing faintly, calling out, begging, reminding me of the weight I carried. With every breath, fear crept deeper into my veins, but I was propelled forward by the desperate need to find her. My mind raced with questions. Was this another form of the torment I had faced? A cruel jest orchestrated by the darkness that hunted me? Shadows flickered, whispering in tones that slithered like serpents through the corridors. "You shouldn't have come back," they hissed. "She won't be the same." Driven by a primal instinct, I moved through the crumbling hallways where beams of moonlight sliced through cracks, illuminating fragments of the past that haunted my every step. Broken dolls lay strewn across the floor, their glassy eyes reflecting nothing but the hollow abyss that now filled this once vibrant home. As I passed a doorway, something caught my attention, a glimpse of movement, a flash of fabric. My heart raced as I rounded the corner, stumbling into a dimly lit parlor. The room was cluttered with what seemed to be an assemblage of forgotten things, old toys, faded books, and a well-worn rocking chair that creaked gently, though no one occupied it. The urge to call out Jennifer's name bubbled to the surface once more, but before I could, I felt an icy draft that wrapped around my ankles, pulling me toward a large mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, trapped between peeling paint and a fading frame. A dark figure stood within it, a woman with long hair cascading like shadows over her shoulders. My breath hitched. It was her. Jennifer. I gasped, eyes wide with realization. She was so close, as if I could reach out and touch her. The reflection was distorted, a funhouse version of reality, where terror shimmered beyond the glass. "Can you hear me?" But her image wavered, her lips moving yet no sound emerged, a silent scream, a desperate plea that clawed at my heart. I stepped closer, transfixed. I could see the fear in her eyes. She looked trapped, just beyond grasp. "What happened to you?" I choked, my voice barely audible above the thrumming dread that pulsed in my chest. Suddenly, the shadows around me thickened, pulsating with a life of their own. Dark tendrils reached out, snaking towards Jennifer's reflection, launching themselves at the glass as if they craved her essence, her very spirit. "No!" I screamed, instinctively throwing myself against the mirror, but I felt an electrical jolt as if hitting an invisible barrier. The room shook violently, the walls trembling and shrieking in protest. "Choose." A voice reverberated, echoing through the confines of my mind. "Her life for your freedom. The price must be paid." Panic surged as I realized the figure in the mirror was no longer just a reflection, it was a gateway, a passage to the unknown. My sister's figure began to distort under the pressure, pulling farther away with each heartbeat. The blend of fear and desperation twisted within me. "I can save you. Run." The shadowed remnants of her voice pierced through the chaos just as the figure lurched forward, fogging the glass with darkness. I staggered back, colliding with the rocking chair, the impact sending me sprawling to the floor. I found myself staring into the mirror once more, but now the surface rippled like water disturbed. I glimpsed moving shapes behind Jennifer, a collection of blurred silhouettes, their faces twisted and angry, emerging from the depths of despair and longing as they clamored around her, their arms outstretched, grasping at the last threads of hope. My stomach churned with a primal fear. The air thickened as time raced ahead, the shadows tightened their grip around me, whispering dark promises. One life to silence the chorus of the damned. One sacrifice for the sake of the other, they breathed, their voices layered like a malignant choir. In that moment, as the weight of the decision hung heavy over me, the ground cracked once more, revealing a chasm filled with writhing shadows that beckoned me forward, daring me to leap into the abyss. "Find me." Jennifer's voice echoed one last time, a haunting plea that reverberated through my very soul. Just as the earth threatened to swallow me whole, I reached for the mirror, my fingertips brushing against the cold surface. The night swelled with tension, and as I set my jaw against the fear welling inside, it hit me. Choice rippled through the darkness like a beacon, and in choosing, I would change everything, not just for me, but for the lost as well. And then, the mirror shattered, the room plunged into chaos, the night echoing with agonized screams and laughter intermingled, leaving me to face the reality of a decision I had not yet made. As shards of glass filled the air like arrows, I found myself spiraling into a vortex of horrors, confronted by the consequences of my impending choice. "Jennifer," my whispered desperation faded, consumed by the oblivion that awaited on the other side, the eternal darkness ready to swallow me whole, should I choose unwisely. The world spun and warped as I was thrust through the jagged portal of the shattered mirror, light and shadow swirling around me like a cyclone of chaos. Instead of landing softly upon familiar ground, I tumbled through an infinite void, each second elongated into an eternity. The air crackled with electricity, and whispers filled my ears like a cacophony of lost souls, their mournful tones washing over me, desperate and pleading that I landed hard, the impact jarring my bones. The scent of damp earth and mold flooded my nostrils, and I found myself sprawled upon a dark, forested floor, the trees towering menacingly above me. Their gnarled branches twisted like skeletal fingers against the pale moonlight, weaving shadows that darted and danced around my vision. I pushed myself up, heart racing, my breath coming in labored gasps. Panic surged through me. Where was Jennifer? Sitting in the damp foliage, I gazed around, realizing I was not alone. Silhouetted figures surrounded me, their faces obscured by the murk of night, but a palpable dread emanated from them, sending shivers racing along my spine. They stared, their hollow eyes boring into my very essence, and I felt naked before their judgment. I was the intruder in their realm, a trespasser in a world steeped in sorrow. "Where is she?" I croaked, my voice cracking against the silence thrumming in the air. My words plummeted into the darkness, swallowed whole as the figures stiffened, their whispers growing louder, a menacing chant that surrounded me in a circle of malevolence. "She does not belong to you," one rasped, its voice like gravel scraping against stone. "Please, I need to find her." I scrambled to my feet, desperate to push past the figures, but they closed ranks, impenetrable and unyielding. The shadows shifted and warped around me, and from the corner of my eye, I caught movement deeper within the tree linea, a flicker of something white against the dark. My heart skipped. "Jennifer!" I called, chasing after that glimmer, the figure's chants sharpening into a haunting melody that twisted my very sense of reason. As I broke through the barricade of shadows, the oppressive air shifted, growing still, smothering every sound around me. I stepped into a clearing and halted, taken aback by the sight before me. There, in a circle formed by ancient stones etched with cryptic markings, stood a figure cloaked in flowing white, hair cascading down her back like a silken curtain. A flicker of recognition shot through me. It was Jennifer, or at least, what remained of her. "Stop!" I shouted, lunging forward, but the air crackled again, as if sparking with an unseen energy. Jennifer turned, and my blood ran cold. Her eyes, once vibrant and warm, were now wide, but clouded with a desolation I had never seen. "You shouldn't have come." Her voice was firm, yet it resonated as a hollow echo, barely scratching the surface of despair. "Jennifer, please, we have to go. We can't stay here." I stepped closer, but an unseen force pushed me back, slamming against an eternal barrier. "Stay. I cannot leave," she whispered, her gaze drifting away, lost in memories that no longer belonged to her. "This place binds me. It feeds on the lost, and the only way to escape is to give something in return." "Give what?" I pressed, desperation clawing at my throat. The shadows danced at the edges of my vision, pressing closer, hungry for her words. Jennifer looked at me with a vacant stare, and it was like glass shattering into a million tiny pieces within my chest. "A life for a life," she murmured, looking down at the ground beneath her feet, swirling with an otherworldly energy. If you wish to take me from this place, you must appease what dwells here, for it has grown restless. No. I won't sacrifice anyone. I cried, rage bubbling to the surface. The figures watched silently, their faces hidden but their intent clear. I turned to the forest behind me and then back to her, the anguish twisting my heart. We can fight this. We can find another way. Remember our childhood? Those summer nights under the stars. I tried desperately to pull her back from the brink. As I spoke, the ground trembled, and the circle of stones began to glow with an eerie light, illuminating the runes carved within and releasing a heavy sigh from the earth. A deep rumble echoed as something powerful stirred beneath, an ancient presence rising, its anger palpable. Compromise must be reached. A voice boomed, shaking my bones as it resonated through the clearing. Dread coiled around me like a serpent, squeezing tight, stifling my thoughts and filling me with a wretched sense of foreboding. One will be taken, one will be freed. Choose now, mortal. I stumbled back against the encroaching figures, their grip tightening, stealing my breath. Jennifer's gaze shifted to me, and I could see the flicker of hope struggling against the oppressive darkness that consumed her. You don't have to bear this alone, she said, voice thick with emotion, but fear seeped into her edges, clouding the light in her eyes. But before I could respond, the air shimmered with a blinding light, and from within emerged a grotesque form, a monstrous apparition, embodying all the dread I had ever felt. It loomed above us, its empty eyes staring into the deepest parts of my soul. Its maw opened, a gaping void ready to consume everything in its path. Panic surged through me as time began to dissolve. The choice was no longer merely mine. The stones began to rumble louder, the glowing runes igniting one by one, illuminating the faces of the shadowy figures who watched with insatiable hunger. Choose. The voice bellowed again, enveloping us in dread. Your sacrifice will be the key to her freedom. In that molten moment, I felt the weight of eternity pressing down upon me, a choice that could unravel the very fabric of existence. Jennifer's eyes locked with mine, pleading, terrified. The shadows writhed around us, and the darkness began to twist and advance, keen on feasting, but I remained frozen, caught in an endless loop of despair and determination, riddled with fear until the ground beneath my feet splintered, revealing a chasm of swirling shadows, beckoning me deeper into darkness. As I flailed for an escape, I realized it wasn't just my freedom at stake, it was hers. The flickering shadows converged, and as I began to grasp reality once more, I heard her voice, tender yet strained, whispering my name amidst the chorus of despair. Please, save me. Choice loomed, clear yet impossibly tangled as I faced the abyss. And just as I steeled myself to take a step forward, everything shattered once more, but this time, it wasn't the mirror that broke. The ground crumbled beneath us, and I screamed into the void, the darkness ready to consume not just one, but both of us in its hungry maw. I awakened once more, the damp scent of earth clinging to my skin, as the weight of an omnipresent shadow envelopes me. I push myself upright in a disorienting blend of fear and confusion. The ground beneath me feels uneven, as if the very soil is shifting in response to my fear. The darkness settles in thick layers, concealing my surroundings, and each heartbeat reverberates like a drum, signaling a foreboding presence with every thump. Where am I? The question burns through my racing thoughts, but before I can process any further, voices erupt from the shadows around me, soft whispers entwined with screams, an agonizing symphony that fills the air. One must remain, they chant, a cold reminder of the curse that ties me to this torment. My heart races as I remember Jennifer, fear grips me in a vice-like hold, and I call out her name, desperate for a response that I dread may never come. Jennifer. I shout, but my cry is swallowed. Panic surges within me, igniting every instinct to break free from this suffocating darkness, yet the shadows pull tighter around me, merging into figures that dance and sway like puppets on strings. I stumble forward, grasping wildly at the shrouded forms, seeking any trace of my sister. Suddenly, a figure breaks from the shadows, a woman dressed in white, her hair flowing like mist. My heart lurches as hope flickers, the familiarity pulling me in. Jennifer. I whisper, inching closer. But when she turns, it is not my sister's face I see, it's a masked reflection shrouded in sorrow, her eyes hollow and devoid of life. You should never have come here, she warns, her voice echoing with ethereal despair. Please, I'm looking for her. I plead, reaching out, but she simply shakes her head, her ethereal form fading only to dissolve into dark laughter carried away by the rising fog. The ground shifts beneath me again, tilting precariously as the whispers rise, their urgency spiraling. One must remain, they chant, a rhythm freezing my limbs. I feel the pull stronger now, and something deep within me begins to stir. It's a hunger, twisted into the very fabric of existence, one that demands a choice, me sacrifice or hers. Choose. The voices scream, crescendoing into chaos as the ground beneath my feet crumbles. The figures morph and twist, faces I once recognized disintegrating into obscurity. Choose. They plead, I stagger back, gripped by despair. What choice could save her? And then, a flicker, her face. Jennifer, I see her just beyond the veil of shadows, her eyes filled with fear and yet determination. You can do this. She cries out desperately, but as I charge forward, the darkness shifts violently, a barrier locking me out from her grasp. The figures close in around me, clawing at the edges of my sanity. Release her. I scream, the weight of their collective agony pressing down like a shroud, as despair seeps into my bones. I won't let you take her. And when I blink, Jennifer is standing at the edge of a precipice, surrounded by swirling shadows that beckon her in. Panic surges through me as I reach out, begging with every ounce of my being. Jennifer, no. Help me, she cries, before it's too late. Her voice is the lifeline I need, the tether pulling me back from the brink as I realize this Cursia legacy of sorrow handed down binds us both. I hear the shattering truth, this isn't just her battle, it is mine as well. A light ignites within me, a resolve stronger than fear. I choose to save you. I scream, flinging myself toward her, drawing upon the remnants of our shared memories, the warmth of laughter shared in childhood. It swells within me, melting barriers as I plunge into the darkness. The shadows writhe, swirling violently as I shake off their grasp. One must remain. They howl, chaos igniting around me. But Jennifer's figure grows ever clearer, drawing me forth like a beacon. Fight with me. I yell, our minds meeting, my spirit wrapping around hers. Together we summon the flickering memories, the shimmering echoes of love and laughter, and with every beat of our hearts, the ground beneath us shifts and weaves into something tangible. Choose. They command, an echo louder than thunder. Only this time, it's not my mind that trembles. I know now what to give. As the shadows coil like serpents around us, I gather the strength from the love that binds us and thrust it forward. Wind roars, the darkness howls in protest, and the figures around us dissolve into thin vapor. Light floods the abyss as the earth trembles, Jennifer's eyes widening in disbelief. What are you doing, sacrificing what was never mine? I reply, knowing the price. The shadows twist and churn violently, writhing against the onslaught of light as my own essence melds with hers. The darkness shatters in a glorious eruption, hurled backward as if pushed by unseen hands, and then, I wink into an existence where time stands still, that I breathe in the scent of lilacs as a warm light envelopes me, pushing aside the encroaching shadows. It is quiet, achingly serene until I recognize her laughter around me. Soft and bright, it washes away the remnants of despair. Together, we are free, Jennifer whispers, the sound echoing like a beautiful melody, filling me with warmth. Paradise glows in the distance, beckoning with its brilliancy, a world untainted by despair, shadows holding no dominion over us, as we walk hand in hand beyond the veil. Yet even in this brilliance, I can't shake the unease lurking under the surface. I glance back at the fading darkness just as it envelopes the chamber behind us. Shadows flicker like flames, and the whispers return lower, relentless, chilling in their promise. Your choice will always return. A deep dread takes hold as I know too well, while we have escaped this moment, the curse is not vanquished, it merely waits. The shadows shift and dance at the edges of my consciousness, ever present a reminder that our final release may not come as easily as we had hoped. No sooner do I breathe a sigh of relief than I am left with the unsettling realization that some doors should never be opened. The last tendrils of darkness vanish behind me, but as I step forward into the light, I can't shake the feeling that shadows linger, waiting for their moment to reclaim me. And as the echoes of laughter fade, I can hear them whisper my name, a looming reminder that the balance between light and dark is far more precarious than it seems. Choose.